September 3, 1944. Belgium. A captain is charging across an open field toward a German machine gun nest. He's carrying grenades. He's running straight at the enemy. He shouldn't even be here. 6 weeks ago, he was in a hospital bed in England with a shattered leg. 2 weeks ago, he hitchhiked across France just to get back to his men. Now he's 50 yards from the German positions. 40 yards. 30. The machine gun finds him. A bullet tears through his neck. Matt Urban goes down. His men drag him into a ditch. Priest appears. He kneels beside Urban and begins administering last rites. Everyone assumes he's dying. But here's the thing about Matt Urban. He's been shot before, many times before, and every single time he comes back. The Germans had a name for soldiers like this. They called them ghosts. By the end of World War II, Matt Urban would be wounded 7 times. He would earn 29 medals for valor. Some historians count more decorations than Audie Murphy, though Murphy became more famous because he was a movie star. For 35 years, nobody knew about Matt Urban because the paperwork was lost. The officer who recommended him for the Medal of Honor was killed. The sergeant who witnessed everything was captured by the Germans. Matt Urban went home, became a recreation director in Michigan, and never said a word. Until one day in 1980, when President Jimmy Carter called him to the White House and said, "You are the greatest soldier in American history." This is his story. Matt Urban was born in Buffalo, New York, in 1919, the son of Polish immigrants in a working-class neighborhood near the railroad yards. He was a fighter from the beginning. At East High School, he played football and ran track, but his real love was boxing. There was something about the ring that spoke to him. The discipline, the one-on-one combat, the idea that when you get knocked down, you get back up. He carried that lesson for the rest of his life. At Cornell University, he became the boxing champion in 3 different weight classes. A childhood friend later said, "Whatever he did it 100%. That was Matt Urban. 100% always." When Pearl Harbor was attacked in December 1941, Urban was ready. He was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant and joined the 60th Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division. His war was about to begin. November 1942, Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa. Urban's division was heading into combat for the first time. There was one problem. Urban was ordered to stay on the ship. His job was recreation officer, planning entertainment for the troops. While his men were dying on the beach, he refused. His colonel threatened him with a court-martial. Urban didn't care. He grabbed a rubber raft, rowed it to shore, and found his unit pinned down under heavy fire. The platoon leader had been wounded. Urban took his place. First day of combat. He defied direct orders because his friends needed him. The desert war was brutal. Scorching hot during the day, freezing at night. Sand got into everything. Food, weapons, eyes, and lungs. The Germans were led by Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, one of the greatest military commanders of the 20th century. American forces learned quickly this wouldn't be easy. In February 1943, at Kasserine Pass, the Germans launched a devastating counterattack. American units were overrun. Thousands were killed or captured. It was a disaster. But Matt Urban's unit held. During one assault, Urban led his platoon against a fortified German position when everything went wrong. The Germans counterattacked. Soldiers fell all around him. The line collapsed. Urban was cut off from his men. Then he turned a corner and came face to face with a German soldier 10 feet away. Maybe less. The German had a rifle. Urban's weapon was empty. No time to reload. No time to run. Urban pulled out his trench knife, 7 inches of steel. The German lunged, trying to raise his rifle. Urban was faster. He closed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed the rifle barrel with his left hand, and drove the knife into the German's chest with his right. The man went down. Urban didn't stop. He picked up the dead soldier's MP40, still warm, and turned around. 3 more Germans were coming around the corner. Urban opened fire. The first dropped. Then the second. The third tried to run. Urban cut him down. When it was over, Urban stood alone in the trench. Blood on his hands. Blood on his uniform. bodies around him, for men killed in less than 30 seconds. His first Silver Star and his first wound. During the fighting, shrapnel from a German grenade tore into his body, earning him his first Purple Heart. Medics tried to evacuate him. He refused. His men needed him. He stayed. Summer 1943, Sicily. The Germans were dug into the mountains. They held the high ground. They could see every American move. Someone had to root them out. Urban's unit got the mission. They crossed the mountains at night, undetected, to flank the German positions. The plan was insane. No roads, no lights, no noise. Just men and pack mules moving through darkness over terrain that would be treacherous even in daylight. They set out at midnight. The path, if you could call it that, wound through rocky ravines and along narrow ledges. One wrong step meant falling hundreds of feet into blackness. The mules kept slipping. Men grabbed rocks to keep from tumbling into the void. Urban led from the front, always. Hour after hour, they climbed, muscles burning, lungs screaming. Complete silence except for boots on stone. At one point, they passed within 50 yards of a German observation post. Nobody breathed. The Germans never heard them. At dawn, they emerged behind enemy lines. The Germans were eating breakfast. Their weapons were stacked. They never expected an attack from the mountains. They never got the chance to fight back. Urban earned his second Silver Star in the fighting at Troina, one of the bloodiest battles of the Sicily campaign. For 33 days, the 9th Infantry Division fought for that town. Street by street, house by house, the Germans contested every inch. By the time Sicily fell, Matt Urban had proven himself one of the most capable officers in the division. He was promoted to captain, but Sicily was just a warm-up. The real test was coming. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Urban and the 9th Infantry Division came ashore on June 11th at Utah Beach. What they found was a nightmare. The hedgerows. The French countryside was divided into thousands of small fields, each surrounded by thick hedges growing atop ancient stone walls. These weren't just bushes. They were 6 feet tall, dense, impenetrable, and the Germans had turned every single one into a fortress. American troops would cross one field only to be cut down by machine gun fire from the next hedgerow. Take that position and there was another 50 yards ahead and another and another. Every field cost lives. Every hedgerow was a battle. Officers took the worst of it. Leading from the front meant dying at the front. This is where Matt Urban became a legend. Near the village of Renouf, France, Urban's company was advancing when German tanks appeared. 2 panzers rolling toward the American lines. Their guns systematically destroyed everything in their path. American soldiers were dying. The company was pinned down. The bazooka gunner took aim at the lead tank. A German bullet found him first. He dropped dead. The bazooka fell from his hands. Urban didn't hesitate. He sprinted through machine gun fire, grabbed the bazooka from the dead man, seized an ammunition carrier, and said, "Follow me." Then he started crawling through the hedgerows. Bullets snapped overhead. The tanks kept firing. Men screamed. Urban kept crawling. He got close enough to see the rivets in the armor, close enough to smell the diesel exhaust. Then he stood up, completely exposed. The tank commander saw him and tried to swing the turret around. Too slow. Urban fired. The rocket hit just below the turret ring, the weakest point. The explosion was massive. Fire and smoke erupted from every hatch. The crew never had a chance. Urban was already reloading. The second tank tried to reverse, tried to escape. Urban stepped forward, aimed, fired, direct hit. The second tank exploded. His men watched in disbelief as their captain, standing in the open under enemy fire, destroyed 2 German tanks by himself. The Americans surged forward, but the day wasn't over. Later that same day, near the village of Orleans, a 3rd German tank spotted Urban. The 37mm gun swung toward him. Urban tried to fire first. He was too slow. The shell hit him in the left leg. The impact was devastating, like being hit by a car. His leg shattered. Blood everywhere. His men rushed to help and tried to carry him to safety. Urban fought them off. "I'm not leaving." They rigged a stretcher so he could sit upright. For the rest of that day and into the night, Matt Urban directed his company's movements while being carried by his own men, sitting on a stretcher, leg torn apart, still giving orders. The next morning, the company launched another attack. Urban was still in command, still on the stretcher. Then a German sniper found him. The bullet passed through his right forearm, 2 serious wounds in 2 days. Only then, when he physically could no longer hold a weapon, was he finally evacuated. He was shipped to a hospital in England. Everyone assumed that was the end of Matt Urban's war. They were wrong. For 6 weeks, Urban lay in that hospital bed. His leg healed slowly. The doctors had done what they could, but the damage was severe. He walked with a cane. Sometimes he couldn't walk at all. The doctors told him his war was over. He would likely be sent home to the States, disability discharge, maybe a desk job if he was lucky. Then he saw the newspapers. The headlines were brutal. Heavy casualties in Normandy, 9th Infantry Division suffers losses, officer shortage critical. His men were dying in those hedgerows. The division was running out of experienced combat leaders. Lieutenants were commanding companies. Sergeants were leading platoons. And Matt Urban, one of the most experienced combat officers in the division, was stuck in a hospital bed 300 miles away. He made a decision. He wasn't going home. He was going back. The hospital wouldn't discharge him, so he didn't ask. He found a group of 40 replacement soldiers being shipped to Normandy. Fresh recruits who had never seen combat, sent to fill the gaps left by the dead. Urban approached their commanding officer. "I'll take charge of these men." "Sir, do you have orders?" Urban looked at him. "I have orders." He didn't, but he said it with such conviction that no one questioned him. He boarded the transport across the English Channel, delivered the replacements to Utah Beach, and then he started hitchhiking. Picture it. Agar Cheho to next step main ISCO YouTube voiceover pacing, short-form reels, ya cinematic cuts Kalia be optimized cardoon. A wounded captain walking with a cane, uniform dirty and wrinkled from the crossing, stood on the side of a road in the middle of a war zone, thumb out trying to catch a ride. Jeeps passed. Trucks passed. Nobody stopped for hitchhikers in a combat zone. Urban didn't give up. He walked when he had to, caught rides when he could, slept in ditches, ate whatever he could find. His leg was screaming. Every step was agony. The cane wasn't enough. Sometimes he had to crawl, but he kept moving. Mile after mile, day after day, toward St. Lo, toward his battalion, toward his men. On July 25, 1944, at 11:30 in the morning, Matt Urban walked into the 2nd Battalion command post. He was filthy, exhausted, barely able to stand. His commanding officer looked up and saw a ghost. "Urban, what the hell are you doing here?" Urban straightened up and threw away his cane. "I came back, sir. Where do you need me?" Urban arrived on the first day of Operation Cobra, the Allied breakout from Normandy. The morning had begun with the largest aerial bombardment of the war. Thousands of American bombers, B-17s, B-24s, fighter bombers, dropped their payloads on German lines. The ground shook for miles. The sky turned black with smoke. Then the infantry attacked. Urban moved forward to find his company. What he found was chaos. His men were pinned down in an open field, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. German machine guns had them zeroed in. Every time someone lifted their head, bullets cracked past. 2 American Sherman tanks meant to support the attack had been destroyed. Their hulks still burned, black smoke climbing into the sky. But a 3rd tank remained intact, a Sherman M4 about 70 yards away. The crew had been hit. The commander and gunner were dead, but the tank itself was undamaged. The driver was still inside. Urban could see the hatch moving. The kid was alive, frozen with fear. The tank wasn't moving. If someone could reach that tank, the German line could be broken. But the ground between Urban and the tank was completely exposed. No cover. The machine guns had it dialed in. 3 men had already tried. 3 bodies lay dead in the field. Urban assessed the situation. He was still wounded. His leg had barely healed. He had walked with a cane for 6 weeks. He looked at his men pinned down, taking casualties, waiting to die. Then he threw away his cane and ran. The first German machine gun opened up immediately. Bullets kicked dirt around his feet. He kept running. 30 yards. His wounded leg screamed with every step. He ignored it. 20 yards. A second machine gun found him. Tracers streaked past his head. He ducked, stumbled, kept moving. 10 yards. He reached the tank, grabbed the hull, pulled himself up. His leg nearly gave out. He caught himself on the turret ring and dropped through the commander's hatch. Inside was a slaughterhouse. Blood everywhere. The dead gunner slumped over his station. The smell was overwhelming. Blood, cordite, burning rubber. Urban shoved the body aside and grabbed the radio. "Driver, can you hear me?" A terrified voice answered. "Yes, sir." "Forward. Drive straight at them." The engine roared. The tank lurched ahead. Urban grabbed the .50 caliber machine gun mounted atop the turret, the M2 Browning, 1,200 rounds per minute of pure destruction. He stood up through the hatch, completely exposed. No helmet, no cover. Just a wounded captain standing on a moving tank, charging straight at the German line. He opened fire. The machine gun roared. Tracers streaked into enemy positions. Germans dove for cover. Some tried to run. Urban swept the gun left and right, pouring fire into everything that moved. The tank smashed through a hedgerow. Urban nearly lost his grip but held on. Ahead, a machine gun nest. An anti-tank gun crew scrambling to turn their weapon. Urban hit them first. The .50 caliber rounds ripped through the position. Bodies flew. The anti-tank gun fell silent. Behind him, something incredible happened. His men stood up. One by one, then in groups the pinned-down soldiers rose from cover. They had watched their wounded captain, alone and exposed, charge straight into the enemy. If he could do it, so could they. The entire battalion surged forward. A nearby sergeant later wrote, "One of the craziest officers suddenly appeared before us, yelling like a madman and waving a gun in his hand. Crazy or not, it worked. The German line collapsed. American troops overran the positions in brutal hand-to-hand fighting. Many Germans surrendered. Many never got the chance. The battalion commander, Major Max Wolf, watched through binoculars from the command post. He turned to Sergeant Earl Evans and said, 'What I just saw, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I'm recommending Urban for the Medal of Honor.' That same day, July 25, 1944, Major Max Wolf was killed in action. The recommendation died with him. Sergeant Earl Evans was captured weeks later and spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. The paperwork vanished. The witnesses were gone. And Matt Urban kept fighting. August 2, 1944. Shrapnel slammed into Urban's chest, narrowly missing his heart. He refused evacuation. August 6, 1944. The battalion commander was killed. Urban took command of the entire 2nd Battalion, still wounded, still fighting. August 15, 1944. More shrapnel, this time in his back. He refused evacuation again. His men called him the Ghost. The Germans had been calling him that for weeks, because no matter how many times they shot him, he kept coming back. The Meuse River in Belgium was a critical objective. If the Allies could cross it, they would have a clear path into Germany itself. The Germans knew this. Urban's battalion was ordered to establish a crossing point near a small village. When they arrived, the Germans were waiting. Machine guns covered every approach. Mortars were pre-targeted on likely crossing sites. Artillery observers sat on high ground, ready to call fire on anything that moved. The first American unit to attempt the crossing was cut to pieces. The second unit was pinned down before reaching 100 yards from the water. The attack stalled. Urban could have stayed at the command post. He was the battalion commander now. He had a radio. He could direct the battle from safety. But Matt Urban wasn't that kind of officer. He left the command post and moved forward, crawling through ditches, sprinting between shell craters, bullets snapping overhead. He found his men pinned down in a field, unable to advance or retreat, taking casualties by the minute. They needed someone to break the deadlock. Urban stood up. Follow me. Then he ran across open ground toward the German positions. Grenades in both hands. No cover. Just speed and aggression. He made it 20 yards. 30. 40. His men followed, inspired by what they were seeing. 50 yards. Then the German machine gun found him. The burst struck his throat. Matt Urban went down hard, spun by the impact. Blood sprayed from his neck. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't speak. His men dragged him into a shallow ditch as bullets continued to tear through the air. Someone pressed a bandage against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. It wasn't working. A Catholic chaplain appeared. No one remembers his name, only that he was there. He knelt beside Urban in the ditch, shells exploding around them, and began administering last rites, the final sacrament for a dying man. Everyone believed it was over, but Matt Urban wasn't finished. Unable to speak, his vocal cords shredded. He began writing with a blood-soaked hand on scraps of paper. He wrote orders. Move the 3rd platoon left. Bring up the mortars. Concentrate fire on the machine gun nest. His men obeyed. The machine gun fell silent. The crossing point was secured. Only then, only after the mission was complete, did Matt Urban allow himself to be carried away. His war was over. 7 wounds. 20 months of combat. 6 major campaigns. Still alive. Urban spent months recovering. The bullet permanently damaged his vocal cords. For the rest of his life, he spoke in a soft, raspy whisper. He was discharged in February 1946. He changed his name from Urbanovich to Urban. He moved to Holland, Michigan, became a recreation director, coached boxing, and never spoke about the war. I just wanted to live a normal life. His neighbors didn't know he was a war hero. His co-workers didn't know. For 35 years, Matt Urban lived quietly in Michigan, and the world forgot the ghost. In the late 1970s, a reporter researching decorated World War II soldiers kept encountering one name, Matt Urban. The medal count rivaled Audie Murphy's, sometimes exceeded it. Why had no one heard of him? Digging deeper, the reporter uncovered a letter written by Sergeant Earl Evans in July 1945, recommending Urban for the Medal of Honor. The letter had been misfiled, buried in bureaucracy, forgotten for 34 years. The Army investigated. Surviving witnesses were found. Men who had seen Urban destroy German tanks. Men who had watched him charge atop a Sherman under fire. Every account matched. In February 1979, Matt Urban received a phone call. Colonel Urban, we have located a bona fide application for the Congressional Medal of Honor. On July 19, 1980, Matt Urban stood before President Jimmy Carter. He was 60 years old. His hair was gray. His voice was still a whisper from that German bullet. Around him stood fellow veterans. Men who had fought beside him in the hedgerows. Many were crying. They had waited 36 years for this moment. President Carter read the citation. 10 separate acts of heroism between June 14th and September 3rd, 1944. Then he looked at Urban and said, Matt Urban showed that moments of terrible devastation can bring out courage. His actions remind this nation what freedom truly means. He paused. You are the greatest soldier in American history. Matt Urban, the man who never talked about the war, struggled to hold back tears. Let's talk about what Matt Urban actually accomplished. 7 Purple Hearts. 7 times wounded in 20 months. Shot in the leg by a tank shell. Shot in the arm by a sniper. Shrapnel in the chest, inches from his heart. Shrapnel in the back. A bullet through his neck. He destroyed 2 German tanks with a bazooka, standing alone in the open. He escaped from a hospital in England and hitchhiked across France to rejoin his men. He climbed onto a tank and charged a German position while wounded. He refused evacuation so many times that both sides began calling him the Ghost. 29 medals for valor. The Medal of Honor. 7 Purple Hearts. 2 Silver Stars. 3 Bronze Stars. The Legion of Merit. The French Croix de Guerre. The Belgian Croix de Guerre. He waited 35 years for the Medal of Honor because the paperwork was lost. And through all of it, the wounds, the war, and the decades of silence, he never once bragged. He went home, coached boxing, lived a quiet life. That's what a hero looks like. Matt Urban died on March 4, 1995, from complications related to his war wounds. One final injury that even he couldn't survive. He was 75 years old. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Matt Urban once said, "I was just doing my job. My men were the real heroes." But here's the truth. On July 25, 1944, a wounded captain who should have been in a hospital bed in England threw away his cane and ran through German machine gun fire to climb onto a tank. Nobody ordered him to do that. He did it because his men were dying. That choice defined everything that followed. The ghost of Normandy, the man who couldn't be killed, the greatest soldier in American history. For 35 years, he walked among us as just another man. A coach, a recreation director, a quiet figure with a raspy voice. Nobody knew and he never told. Because for Matt Urban, being a hero wasn't about medals. It was about your men, your mission, your duty. And when your men needed you, you showed up, even if you had to hitchhike across a war zone to do it. 7 wounds, 20 months of combat, 29 medals for valor, 35 years of silence. Lieutenant Colonel Matt Urban.